Hello and welcome to Right Outside. Tonight's football practice facility. It was pretty busy in there, so we hopped right outside, found a little corner to record this video because it's game week. I'm Ryan Sylvia, this is Noah Taylor. We're with VolReport.com on the Rivals Network. Spoke with Josh Heupel and two players on offense, Squirrel White and Javonte Spraggins, and then safety on the defensive end, Andre Turrentine. And we also got a depth chart. The depth chart was interesting to say the least. We'll touch on it really quickly. There's only a handful of guys that don't have an or next to their name. If you want to see the full depth chart, it's over at VolReport.com. The only unquestioned starters on this entire depth chart: at center, Cooper Mays; at right guard, Javonte Spraggins; at quarterback, Nico Iamaleava; no one on defense; at punter, Jackson Ross; kickoff specialist, Josh Turbeville; and holder, Jackson Ross. Every single other position has an or next to their name. The entire defensive line is listed as starters. That includes James Pierce Jr. at Leo, who's listed alongside three other guys for four guys listed as possible starters at Leo. John Campbell Jr. can't even get the nod over Dane Davis at right tackle. Lance Hurd isn't going to get the nod over Larry Johnson III at left tackle. All three tight ends are listed as starters. All of the wide receivers have two starters listed. At running back, five guys are listed as a starter. It means nothing. We knew it was going to be a bunch of ors on this depth chart, but it's just kind of funny how many there actually ended up being. We'll see who the actual starters are against Chattanooga, but that's obviously subject to change as well, with some position battles still ongoing. You have to expect left guard, they'll use Chattanooga as kind of a tryout. Maybe some of those wide receiver positions, running back, star, and a couple other safety, a couple other spots. But that's the depth chart. It means nothing, but that's what they gave us, and that's what's listed as that starting lineup. Let's talk about what Josh Heupel had to say at the podium, though. What was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, he got a couple of questions about, that he's kind of gotten throughout fall camp too, but about Nico still being a young guy and a guy who hadn't played a lot of football. Obviously, still a lot of confidence in him. When he was talking about him, he's the starter, obviously, but I thought it was interesting. He got a question about how he kind of meshes with veteran guys. And Javonte Spraggins got a similar question too, having a quarterback that's younger than you. For the first time in a while, obviously you had two older guys in Hendon and Joe when they came here, played at other schools before they got here. But talked a lot about how they help him kind of grow in the game. And obviously it comes down to receivers, catching passes, running the right routes. It comes down to the offensive line blocking for him, running backs, pass blocking and things like that. But he also said, it's up to Nico as well to kind of help those guys out in turn. I think there's a lot of expectations going into the season that this offense will improve, but ultimately it is going to come down to kind of how those guys gel on the field. The early returns are from fall camp and things like that this offense will get better. But obviously we'll find out a little bit more on Saturday against Chattanooga.
And that reminds me of, I think Squirrel White said it, like, hey, what are the expectations for Nico going into his first year as a starter? And he said there shouldn't kind of be that learning curve. Like, it should be right away. He should be a really effective quarterback. I also thought it was interesting, Josh Heupel was asked about the expanded college football playoffs, and maybe does that change anything going into a season? Do some of the goals maybe change when before you had to really win the SEC championship game to get in that 4-team dance, and now with 12 teams, if you go 10-2, you're probably in it. Like that 2022 Tennessee football team, they have 2 losses. They would have been in that playoff situation. He said the coach answer, though, kind of, hey, we're taking it one game at a time, 1 week at a time. Right now we're focused on going 1-0 against Chattanooga, but it does pose kind of an interesting question on what are some of the different, like, does a loss halfway through the season, does that hurt you as much? Like, once again, thinking back to that 2022 season, that loss to Georgia, I think, kind of dashed a lot of hopes. It was like, okay, well, now you maybe need Georgia to lose one or two to get into the SEC championship game, where you need to go perfect the rest of the way, and then you're still kind of holding on to a prayer that you get an invite without even appearing in the SEC championship. It causes a lot of questions. Well, now maybe you can survive 1-2 losses. So that is something to keep in mind going forward this season, next season, as Tennessee and the rest of the college football world kind of progresses. What are your takeaways from what the players had to say?
Yeah, we've talked about him a lot on here, but it felt like every guy that was up there today, besides Javonte Spraggins, obviously, talked about Boo Carter and what he's done. And Squirrel White gave an interesting perspective. We asked him to maybe name drop some guys in that secondary that have really impressed him as now a veteran receiver in that room. And Jermod McCoy was one, obviously a newcomer, a transfer, but Boo Carter was one too. And his quote that I think was kind of maybe the quote of the day from the players was, Boo Carter looked college ready by the time he got our game ready, by the time he stepped on campus. So obviously a lot of positive momentum about him, and not just because he was a standout player coming in, one of the headliners of your class. Now you're expecting him to go out there, and I know he's got an "or" next to his name, obviously, a lot of them do. But, a guy that you're expecting to play week one in maybe perhaps a starting role, and certainly a role that's he's going to be in the rotation for sure. But guys seem to be impressed with him.
And that rotation is what caught my eye as well. Like we said, there's 6 guys listed as starters for receiver, essentially. But I do expect all 6 of those guys and probably more to play throughout the season in every single game. That's not something we've necessarily seen from Josh Heupel in Tennessee since he's gotten here, where that 2022 season, like you had your 3 guys when healthy that you were rolling out. It was Cedric Tillman and Brew McCoy on the edges or on the outside, and then Jalen Hyatt in the slot, and then occasionally maybe Ramel Keaton would come. Like it was pretty much the 3 guys. And last season when healthy, it was 3 or 4 guys. Well, now with all the depth they have, I think they want to go a lot deeper. Squirrel White said that Kelsey Pope hasn't necessarily talked to them about exactly what that rotation is going to look like, but he seemed like he was aware that there was probably going to be a bit of a rotation. And I know we talked to some guys previously as well in that wide receiver room who are excited about that rotation. They think that can help. I think it was Dante Thornton said, like, all right, well, Squirrel goes down, catches a big play. Well, now he can take a breather, and we can bring in another guy that we're just as confident can do the same thing. So at the end of the day, it should keep Tennessee receivers fresh. And if you're deeper at wide receiver than another team is at defensive back, well, by the time you get to that fourth quarter, maybe you're in a much better position to make some big plays down the field. So that rotation is another thing to look out for as this season progresses. But as we said at the beginning, it's finally game week. We're less than a week away from Chattanooga coming to Knoxville inside Neyland Stadium. Thought about it today, the first time under Josh Heupel that Tennessee is opening in Neyland Stadium on a Saturday. All the other ones have been a little atypical. You have 2 Thursday starts in the first 2 years, and then you're over at Nissan Stadium in Nashville against Virginia last year. So it's been even Nissan you kind of count as a home game, but it's kind of been that home environment, but this is the first time it's on that Saturday, so it doesn't mean anything, but also just kind of a funny thing that Tennessee's doing to start this season. But we'll have full coverage leading up to game day, and then of course on game day and throughout the rest of the season. We have it all over at VolReport.com. Links to everything you need is in the description. Thank you for watching.